Hello, Ishtar.
Hello, Ilona. It's nice to see you again.
Yes, wonderful to have you here on the show again. And today, let's talk about this one shift that changed, oh, it has the potential to change somebody's entire life.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
So, what was that one shift for you?
That one shift for me was in a million different flavors, or maybe 1,000 different flavors. A million's a lot, but in 1,000 different ways, finding some place that doesn't change.
Hmm.
Finding a strata of consciousness that when I quote unquote found it, realized that it had been there, peeking around corners, uh, waiting patiently in the back of my mind underneath all the thoughts that I was having, finding that space that's is not a space that's seemingly endless, and that is the thing that really changed everything.
Hmm. And do you
180
remember the
degrees.
moment? It was something like, oh, aha moment or some kind of
Oh,
experience, or was it gradual that you didn't even notice?
it was kind of both. Uh, Definitely a lot of aha moments that were gradual to to the point that you don't always notice the first one as that this is it. We're irrevocably changed, never to have never to have suffering or never to have a neurotic thought. I can't say that that was my experience.
Hmm.
There was a lot of yo-yoing
Hmm.
in and out and kind of having these pockets of falling in. But let me try to remember the first time. That's difficult. Uh, Short of sort of all the accidental dips in, which are wonderful, which were many. Maybe there was when I started meditation, and I can remember uh, sitting down with a new type of technique and basically thinking a mantra
Hmm.
and following this mantra. And previously to that, meditation had often been much more of a struggle. It was something where I was trying to tame the mind and, through concentration. And actually, I have to say there was some benefits in that. I think I was touching silence, but not enough for me to really notice it. And so, somehow following this mantra took me very, very quickly into infinite space. It was the darndest thing. I remember the teachers of the class were telling me giving me instructions that were very, very different than the instructions I'd previously been given. And I was, thinking in my mind as I've got my eyes closed, sitting in this chair, oh, this can't possibly work. Not trying to control the mind, not trying to fight it. And then I noticed that my right hand was just completely relaxed, immobilized, but in a
Hmm.
delightful way. And I was like, "What in the, before I could finish the question, what in the world in my head, I found myself as if my attention had just whoop, gone 180, as if most of the rest of the time my attention had been sort of stuck in this kind of half dome of thoughts all over the place, and then the dome flipped, and all of a sudden it was like I had an eye that was looking into just immense infinite space. And I say infinite, I don't know, but it's of
Hmm.
just a sense of vastness that had really no ending. And that was powerful. And that sort of ushered in several days of no matter what I was doing, eating, joking around,
Hmm.
attending more class, going to the bookstore in between class sessions, of having sushi, whatever it was going on that weekend. There was a sense of this presence that was just sitting there, that was looking out through my body, that was kind of underneath the dining table, that I picked a book off a shelf at a bookstore, and there was a sense of that inside there too. So that
Mm.
was magical. That was really, though, a start because, it's kind of like the magic faded to a certain degree. But thankfully, I was sort of put there long enough to really register. Okay, there's definitely a different way this nervous system can be used in a consistent manner without me having to, sort of be a crazy ascetic all the time,
Mhm.
and try to control everything. Uh, yeah, so that was quite memorable.
Mhm. Wonderful. And that recognition, that one recognition changed your entire life.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And I also I think the sense that there was maybe, I'm not quite sure about free will and all that stuff. I'll table that question, but
Aha.
but that there was a sense that there was some kind of agency
All right.
that I didn't have to just sort of accidentally, wake up on the right side of the bed and find myself having a bunch of peak experiences, or that I didn't have to, go through the trouble of a near-death experience, right? It didn't have to,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
all these things that you really have zero agency in. A lot of the mystical experiences are the experiences of presence, or similar flavors of consciousness came through accident, but to have a sense that, wow, I could actually engage in practice and have kind of predictable results. That was just yeah, of revelatory.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, though, it's like, of and you go and have this experience. You kind of dip into this uh, wonderful space, and then maybe the next day, the tone of the day, of course, might be in some ways back to normal. And I was like, oh, almost having more content of sort of that, neurotic thoughts and of emotions coming up that I didn't want to deal with, and all of that sort of thing. And so that, you know, momentarily that was sort of dismaying to me. Thankfully, when I took the meditation class, the teachers were saying, like, well, kind of set me up for that in a way, and said, okay, well, that's kind of predictable. You're going to go through these cycles in this process, that that your minds, might be able to shift into the strata of consciousness, but you're sort of a multi-layered being. You have such a thing as a body, which I
Mhm.
needed reminding of
Mhm.
frequently in those days. You have a body, you have a psychology, you have a lot of layers, and all these layers are going to be sort of releasing, healing, opening up, jettisoning old tensions, and then sort of that release of that process of releasing tensions. You're probably going to have some pretty shitty days, and I was grateful that that was, kind of laid out before me. Not like it made me enjoy the shitty days anymore,
Mhm.
but there we were. And so then for a long time there's this process of having really wonderful clarity and beauty, and sort of, having days where the meditation practice, and outside of the meditation practice there would be this sense of this, again, this kind of background presence, sometimes a foreground presence,
Mhm.
in synchronicity. And then the next day it would just be like feeling, I'd wake up feeling like I just got hit by a truck, and you like, nobody punched me. Why, why am I sore all over? Uh, and
This is one
yeah,
of most common questions that people ask after just having a shift. It's like, why is it that I felt this wonderful and now it's just like stepping back? Or I feel like
yeah,
nothing changed and
yeah,
this
yeah,
is this is natural, this is normal, this is how it goes. It's nothing wrong
yeah,
with it. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's, in some ways, if one persists in something that's working, then it's strengthening,
Hmm.
in the sense, being able to kind of modulate back and forth between vastness and, kind of contraction, opening, contraction. As long as one kind of keeps going, the contractive states, are increasingly expansive. Sort of the baseline of experience moves. So I think there's some benefit to having expansion, contraction. And sort of the analogy that was used at my meditation class, which I think is sort of very common to see like transcendental meditation
Hmm.
classes, is the analogy of that the mind being dipped into presence, into silence, into samadhi is very similar to a cloth being dipped into dye and then being pulled out to dry in the sun.
Hmm.
And at first when the blank cloth comes out of the dye, the color of the dye is really deep in it, but then you put it on the clothesline and the sun really takes it back almost all the way to the base neutral color, but there's a little bit of the dye that is still in
Hmm.
there
Oh, that's
that
beautiful.
that's permanent. And so by and that's the analogy, just by sort of being persistent, we might not notice that each day the dye is a little bit deeper. It
Hmm.
just it but after some time, after some months, after some years, whatever it happens to be, uh, well, there we go. Now we've got a purple cloth
Mm.
at some point. And yeah, you're right. It's one of the most common questions I'll get, because it's a very common experience where people will have at first what in their minds they've set up as, oh, this is a successful meditation session. And the next day they'll say like, I'll get an email and they'll be like, well, I'm having more thoughts than before, or
Yeah,
or
yeah.
things are much busier, and I mean, typically uh, uh, that's one of two things. On the one hand, they might be having this profound release of tensions that is causing all sorts of activity, which often gets picked up as increased thoughts. On the other hand, they're just actually more present, and it's not like the volume has increased. Their attention is able to actually pick up on the full extent of what's there.
Oh, that's a great
So,
point.
oh,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
I like to remember that breathing is expansion and contraction. It's just the rhythm of nature.
yeah,
Everything breathes. So is this experience is also breathing, expanding,
yeah.
coming back, exhaling. It's a little bit like accordion, you know? You have
Yes.
to have both to have the music. You can't just go, ah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Of course, I think I just wanted all the expansion and no,
Yeah.
no
And it's like,
contraction. Yeah. And the other thing about, if we're going to talk about that one shift, I mean, it's of course it's that one shift that most of us have to have a million times in a way. But the importance of that one shift in my experience was actually related to love, and related to uh, worth. And so it's really where the rubber hits the road for most of us. And so that very quickly, that sort of dip into this infinite strata of, it was as if from there, love was pouring into my heart and love was pouring into my body. And it really made me realize in a visceral way, like, hey, this thing that you've been spending an awful lot of time and energy trying to get from other people,
mhm, mhm,
and in which I would, like most of us, kind of contort myself in ways to ensure that I got that, was just sitting right there. And God, what that's a wonderful weight off. That's a wonderful freedom, not to have to chase around for it,
mhm,
not to have any sense that you need to change yourself into what you think is somebody else's cup of tea, and put yourself into some sort of unnatural, stilted form. Like having that there, well, it's kind of obvious that that's wonderful, but that was a big impact. Yeah.
Did that happen at the same time, like your new meditation, or was it something later or earlier?
Oh, all. Again, yeah, again, it's kind of like yo-yoing. So but thankfully, yeah, there wasn't mu that much of a lag for me. For some people, there can be a bit more of a lag in
Hmm.
which they might be having these really very interesting experiences of things like, oh, the silent mind,
Hmm.
or the or experiencing this deep, infinite kind of witness at the bottom of their consciousness, and yet it might not necessarily translate into sort of the structure of their emotional body, or into sort of psychological healing. Or in my case, that there was a pretty quick translation
Hmm.
of, maybe because I was very young, and I think had in relative terms, I think, a fairly easy life. I don't know why. That there could be many reasons that are beyond
Just
my
because.
knowing, but I
Okay.
have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was fairly quick. And of course it has to stick. And so it's very easy for even with those initial experiences to still be, grasping quite a bit. It's a very old habit to try to that most of us have, where we're sort of trying to control our reality, where we might have, where we kind of want to hold on to, sort of being sort of a successful, little separate person.
Hmm.
And it's so many different habits, and so that's it, it's almost inevitable for most people to kind of continue to put their hand on the hot stove of suffering, more times. Most of
Yeah.
us don't get the memo once, as I
Uh-huh.
like, and completely rewire and change all their habits and turn on a dime. So of course, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, well, this wholeness or this stillness or presence, it's always here. It's
yeah,
this very sense of being or very sense of aliveness
yeah,
that is just so natural and so present all the time that it's not noticed.
yeah, completely. And in my case, it's also very similar to um, a lot of people that I've known, is we sort of dip into that wholeness and then realize, wait a second, this was something that when I was 3 years old, or 9 years old, or a few months back, that I have been dipping into at different points without really knowing what I was dipping into the whole time.
Hmm.
That this kind of wholeness has been, staring me in the face, forever. That it's been in all the little cracks of reality, that it's been sort of underneath all of my previous, flailing about. That that that's an amazing sort of thing. That to have that sense of, my God, this whole time, really, really, wow. Sometimes, and it changes memory too, which I've always found is interesting. It doesn't edit the memories, but it adds another dimension. It's almost like what happens with people in near-death experiences, self included, is that you'll have the memory of an event, and it would seem that you have it in fuller detail, but and then there's also a perspectival change. in the
Hmm.
memory, like remembering the events of your own little life, but there's now noticeably a background of this sort of infinite wholeness that's holding the scene and filling up the characters and is often sort of the main constituent feel of the memory.
How
And that's
interesting.
fascinating.
Yeah.
When I was a um, sort of like semi-cloistered monk type in those years
Hmm.
of so really still kind of like very much in a practice fuck up kind of place. A lot of these things also came to me in the dream state. It was kind of like the dream state was an easy one and for wholeness to sort of slip into. And so I remember having these dreams in which I was very clearly every character in the dream and all the space and the space in between all the characters and experiencing everything simultaneously. And I would wake up from these dreams and for sometimes for a few hours in my normal interactions with my friends, that would persist. And there and that was really a nice way to go because it takes the edge off and
Uh-huh.
you know and so that was lovely, but yeah, it's like that wholeness will slip in wherever it can, wherever it needs to, where I think like water where it'll find the exploit the cracks,
Hmm.
uh you know, get through. Yeah,
I want to touch something. There are people that are seeking this or looking for it. And yes, it's so here, it's so visible when you have eyes to see it. But sometimes I find that there is a blockage so thick, so strong that says, no matter what you do, no matter how long you're going to look, no matter how many years you're going to try, this is just going to prove that you're not going to get it. Like this natural state is here, but there is a program running, some kind of crazy program running that no matter how long and whatever I do, it's not going to happen for me. And it kind of self reinforces for
yeah,
years.
yeah. Oof, oof.
It's
Yeah,
so painful.
yeah, that's a rough one.
I know.
Yeah, 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 that's a really rough one.
It's like, okay, there is no hope. I'm going to keep seeking. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to
Yeah,
do therapy. I'm going to go to teachers or gurus
yeah,
with this block that it will never happen. And it will
yeah.
prove me again and again and again that it
Mm,
cannot happen for me.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah,
And it's just such a little tiny, uh, unimpressive program. Yet
yeah.
it
And,
seems
and yeah, that's
unreachable.
one that has a lot of sort of very similarly wired programs. Yeah, absolutely. I I definitely got to experience some versions of that one. That's for sure. I'm sort of just remembering back now on what my 18, 17, 18, 19, 20 year old nervous system could feel like at times. I think in my case, it was very, very helpful to that I had a practice that uh, I think profoundly affected my physical body as well, in the sense that my body would be in a very deeply relaxed state frequently, and so in my case, it was like I had this sort of very seemingly more objective receipt
Mm-hmm,
that kind of contradicted whatever might be floating up
mm-hmm,
in the headspace. It couldn't deny, like, well, that body is sure enjoying what's going on. It seems to be releasing its tensions. But of course, then even then, that sometimes the mind is strong enough, our belief in the mind is, and all the thoughts that are produced therein is strong enough to reject that. And in that case, it's just really nice to be sort of to have some kind of crazy persistence
Mm.
as well. I mean, I think that's a profound one of the most important virtues in this sort of game of finding the one thing that's hidden in plain sight
Yeah.
is to just, keep at it.
Mm.
I think it is helpful though. I wouldn't want to keep at it in like there are smarter ways of keeping at it. We'll put it that way. And so it is good to, you know, if there are certain things that are sort of objective signs that yeah, you're headed in the right direction, I think it's intelligent to organize life and organize a spiritual path around that. So there's that. Um, so if every now and then I was blessed, I might have had a few periods where it seemed like nothing much was happening, and maybe I should give up this whatever I'm doing and go back to Wisconsin or something. And because obviously this whole spiritual path thing is probably not for me. These would be thoughts that would come up
Hmm.
periodically, and
Hmm.
then just as soon as I would have those, maybe a day later or a few days later, an experience would come up where that was to me was almost undeniable that there was some progress happening. And usually it would be something like something happening out in the everyday world situation would come up that normally would completely frazzle me, and then there would be no reaction to it,
Hmm.
and I'd be like,
Hmm.
what? Hey, what? I remember one time I was actually being told by a fellow monk at our ashram, the thing I least wanted to hear and I was afraid of hearing. And he took me aside and said, like, I think you don't belong here. Let's face it, you're not doing very well at all. You kind of suck at this. You need to go. And actually, I think he meant it too, which is
You
which
meant
probably helped.
it?
But, oh yes,
Wow.
absolutely. For whatever reason, he wanted me out. That was, but to my surprise and to his surprise, when he's saying those things
Hmm.
to me, I was fully expecting. Pretty soon, my heart's going to start going. I'm going to be like my muscles are going to tighten. I'm going to be in some kind of, fight response here or something, and then nothing. And I was just completely bewildered, that there would be no reaction to this, and instead of no reaction, it was also this kind of sense of joy. I mean, that was bizarre. I mean, that was
Uh-huh.
absolutely bizarre. And he saw that, to his credit, he's like, oh, you know, maybe you should stay, which is like kind of hilarious.
Uh-huh. Nice story.
As well, yeah, and as basically at that time, I was having all those thoughts like, well, I've been going hard at this for a while. I'm getting nowhere. I'm awful at this compared to all the people around me. Yeah, let's throw in the towel. They're gonna find out I'm a fraud soon,
Hmm.
and they're gonna fire me. You could
Hmm.
get fired from a place where you're not really making any money anyways. But yeah, yeah. So like things like that, I mean, would come in. Sometimes the dry spell would be longer, but thank God for dumb persistence in
Mm,
that case.
yes, I love
You
that
know.
you mentioned persistence because that is something that keeps that hand going while this one is saying you can't. So it
Yeah.
keeps going.
Yeah, I mean the habits run deep. I mean they really can, and so I mean some people like hate to hear this actually because it's like tell me it's just like completely easy, and yeah, there's a certain level where it's kind of no, you kind of have to remove the thorns from the hand,
It hurts.
with the other thorn, take them out and be persistent about it, and with that persistence at some point then what was once 50 thorns in the hand is now maybe two. And that's it. And great.
It's like a whole
Yeah.
hedgehog.
Yeah, like a, like a whole hedgehog. That's right, Ilona. Like our sort of te tendency to be identify as separate egos is like when dogs chase porcupines and get the quills in their face. I don't know. Yeah, basically.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just important to notice the programs that are in the way, because otherwise we can be striving, somebody can be striving for to find the wholeness, to find
Yeah.
natural state. But if there is something in the way, unless it's addressed, it will still be there.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
thorn,
Yeah.
that thorn will still be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, something I'm grateful for on the topic of thorn removal is that when I started my instincts and basically what I had maybe read up to that point or ingested, did make the thorn removal process sound like such a difficult thing that why even bother? Why even bother undertaking this craziness? What,
Yeah.
you'd read different, like especially the old Western esoteric or occult literature, which was very psychologically oriented, would be like, well, these sort of unconscious blocks, they're so cunning that you have to be more cunning. And you will have to face the quote dwellers on the threshold, and all this stuff. And I'd be like, well, if I'm really honest with myself, I don't think I'm going to be able to quite do that. And I was extremely grateful that a lot of this stuff actually just sort of falls off. That there isn't some sort of really isn't some sort of like cunning bad actor in there who's fighting tooth and nail. That it's really more if we when we start to touch presence, even one profound immersion into silence or presence, uh, you could have dozens of things fall off. I mean, some people's biographies are kind of like that. They'll have this profound peak experience, which to me, the core of a peak experience is in most cases probably samadhi, probably some sort of, immersion into presence. And maybe they might think they just report one peak experience, but it changed their whole life. And the whole life, went in a completely different, easier uh, direction. And so sometimes I was really grateful to even like one of my first meditation classes. As a student, I went. This is where I found presence, and the thing that really told me that something interesting had gone on wasn't all the great maybe internal experiences, but when I got home the next day and woke up in the morning, uh, I was having a conversation with my dad, and then he started saying something. I don't even remember what it was, but he started saying something that in those days as kind of a reactive, somewhat reactive teenager, usually would have caused
Mhm.
pushed a button in me. And then of course there's no button. And then I'm like, and then he looks at me like he's noticing the button didn't get pushed. So then he goes again, and then it's not there. And we were completely surprised that, in 3 days, this thing, I wish I remembered what it was, this or the phrase, that this sort of line of questioning that usually pissed me off,
Mhm.
um, didn't do anything. And not like I needed his validation at all, but it was very also very funny from then my dad to say like, well, whatever meditation you're doing now, it seems to be good, or something like that. So yeah, it's like I didn't do anything I didn't do anything at all. I didn't there didn't do I didn't go around with a wrench inside the psyche and unbolt things and jettison things with any kind of conscious agency. Of all I had to do was just engage in a practice that put my whole being into presence. And from doing that repeatedly, it's like all of these things were sort of jettisoned. Like there's this wonderful capital I intelligence that if we can, all we have to do is maybe we don't have to meet it halfway. We have to maybe meet it 1/10 of the way. I know maybe that 1/10 is really big, seems really
Mm-hmm,
big, but
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
we have to meet it 1/10 of the way with persistence and intelligence and devotion and dedication, and then 9/10 comes back,
Mm-hmm.
and which I found incredible and so thankful for that because the idea of trying to fix yourself um, is exhausting. I mean, it's absolutely, fix yourself from the perspective of the broken self or whatever. I mean, that's kind of a mind fuck too. That, and that's what my days as sort of a self-helper
Mm-hmm,
were
mm-hmm.
kind of based in. Not that I'm criticizing actually self-help in general, in truth, but there was a lot of that. Instead, it was more, instead of trying to sort of fix a broken self from the broken self, it was fall into wholeness and have wholeness communicate itself to itself.
Oh, that's so
And and
wonderful.
and and it's like, whoa, yeah. I mean, my God, I remember like crying buckets of tears of joy. I wasn't a crier either,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, whoa, what a relief. And that came from the relief actually of having the sense that, wait, I don't have to fix myself. You know, whoa, that was, yeah, that was, a huge sort of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Mm.
yeah, that's,
I noticed that there is both things going on. There is a
mm,
cosmic washing machine, and there is
yeah,
also an intelligent, silent Hoover.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And ain't that grand? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, some stuff
yeah.
that is just being hoovered by that silence or by that presence that comes in, and it leaves without any saying bye bye or not even consciously, just drops
Yeah,
away.
one of my favorite definitions for Brahman is the eater of everything.
Ah,
For that very reason, it's like it is hoovering everything up.
hovering up.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't need that
yeah.
anymore. Let's take that away.
No,
Hmm.
no,
Yeah, but at the
yeah,
same time, there are these things, these sticky stories and stuff that
yeah,
actually do need to be heard,
yeah. Of,
validated,
of course.
healed. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the healing part.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the wonderful thing that the play is divine. It's not a bullshit play. It's a divine play, and being a divine play, there's kind of a sense of all of these things needing and wanting to happen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, uh, and that can be a bit of I suppose for some people it feels like a paradox. Uh, so it is.
So it is.
Yeah. I remember, God, I think something, so it was a combination of a relationship breakup and food poisoning, which you don't necessarily want together.
It's a nice sandwich.
Like, boom, at the same time.
There you go.
And so, in other words, I ended up on top of a toilet,
Mhm.
vomiting, and with all the emotions in there as well. And that was one of those sort of grace-filled moments where engaged in that, I was also sort of doing uh, very lightly doing my mantric practice, not as a way to sort of stop the feelings, but as a way to keep me as loose and open as possible to be able to feel the whole damn thing, without
Mhm.
running away. And then I kind of kept going, and it would have been my habit at the time to want to sort of sort of not feel a lot of
Mhm,
that
mhm.
and to
Yeah,
run from it. And then I
yeah.
remember, being with the I don't want to make this too graphic for the audience who's squeamish, but while this was happening, then relaxing to such an extent that, oh my God, this is great. This is perfect. this
Mhm.
toilet bowl that I'm looking at, right now, these feelings, this all of it was just perfect. Exactly. And to the extent that there was a sense that wasn't a new sense, but again, we have to get the same lesson over and over and over again. It's like a memo that has to, filtrate its way through all these little layers and reach everything. It was like, oh yeah, that's right. This one wholeness is the thing that's behind all of this, and it's kind of orchestrating all these events for its joy in some sense, or for no reason at all that the human mind can comprehend at least. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just giving space a little bit for that silence to come in, hoover what's no longer needed. There we go. Done. Finished. Next.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm reminded, and I don't know if I talked about this the last time, whatever. I'm reminded of one moment where I came in. Uh, Again, it was back in the old ashram days, but I came in and one of our sort of main teachers was there. It was a very, say, very whole being, and she was there. I even remember the quality of light coming through the windows, the people who were in the scene, and I just in one crystalline moment, again, just the moment, the now that has to come over and over again that we have to fall into. I slipped into it very, very profoundly. I was like, wait a second, this thing that I've been going toward in and out of it's already awake. There's and for some reason that struck me because I think I had this subtle idea, even though intellectually I knew that, of course, intellectually, but I had this sort of other more subtle notion that somehow, again, that I had to do something to sort of make it more awake, or I had to do something, to somehow that the little I could do something to expand that the
Mm-hmm,
thing in and
mm-hmm,
of itself, which is a sort of a ridiculous notion when you say it out like that
mm-hmm,
philosophically, but
mm-hmm,
it's not a ridiculous notion of the unconscious,
mm-hmm,
which sort of smuggles its biases in. And of course, like a lot of people came from sort of a no pain, no gain kind of culture, where it's like hard work, hard work, hard work in all ways. That's how you have to
yeah.
get, move through life. And I realized, oh my God, I've been smuggling that hard work notion into even this thing that feels quite infinite to me. How can you make it work? It was such another profound relief to have to be experientially realizing, wait a second, it's actually just it's like a giant, you know, million voltage light bulb. It's like a sun that's been shining equally the whole time. It's just kind of my perception, which has been modulating in and out of that space. For some reason, that was an entirely holy moment in this life. And in touching that, I realized, wait a sec. It was another one of those moments where you fall into the now, and then you realize that same now has been basically in every single moment of your own existence. And so there's this kind of like I went under the surface of my timeline and was sitting in a place that was embracing the entire life and was like, oh my God, that sun has been shining as full everywhere. Oh my God, how crazy I've been, right? How silly it's been for me to sort of think otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. like sun is here, I am here. There's a shadow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Shadows moving. Oh, how interesting. What is it doing? Let's chase shadows. But then suddenly
Yeah.
it's like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
there's the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of what like it's a profound game of hide and seek.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we are hiding from ourselves
Yeah. It would seem so.
for the fun of it
Yeah.
and for the
I think
pain of
so.
it.
Yeah. It might be an off take, perhaps, but I kind of think that at a certain level, I get the sense that at a certain level, pain is great fun for
You
the
know, horror
infinite.
movies.
Yeah,
People
I
like horror
mean,
movies.
yeah, yeah. I remember I had a kidney stone,
Ouch.
and that was it was a really bad one too. So, um, and so I didn't know it was a kidney stone. So went to the hospital,
Mhm.
see what is this, uh, and that was an interesting experience. Mostly the experience of life was ow, just continuously. But there, in between the ows, underneath the ows, there was a sense of this aspect of the divine that's kind of like, isn't this wonderful? Isn't this great? Isn't this grand? Almost to me, sort of this giant mirthful laughter, not of course in derision, but out of joy. It's like, okay, thank you for that. Yeah. And speaking of wholeness, I mean, like that wholeness, it moves and it spreads, which is a wonderful thing. What I mean by that is that, yeah, we might find it. For instance, to start in our very, very deep meditations, which is wonderful. And then we come out of those meditations and maybe we have this kind of a bliss battery or a presence battery that kind of might dwindle down
Yeah, yeah.
during the
Mhm.
day, and then things get a little bit ragged, and then go back into meditation, fill up again, or something like that. But as long as you kind of persist in that, at some point, that wholeness is like it seems as if it's almost actively trying to find us too,
Mhm.
in a way, and it starts to pop up, in the peripheral vision, and then it's almost as if it's staring at us from our own hands, and it starts to creep into us, in the guise of other people.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's sort of a wonderful stage as well, and a wonderful phenomena. Yeah, and it's kind of I think Rumi was really sitting in that spot quite a bit in his poetry. I definitely feel Paramahansa Yogananda in his writings, sitting very firmly in that spot of the heart and the body itself, opening up to the cosmic beloved. And the cosmic beloved is really none other than the infinite with a very, very subtle form, or the infinite presence working through the forms of the world and enlivening them. And that's a wonderful thing as well. And not really a distraction if it's based in presence itself. It's almost a necessary part for some people of their journey. And I've known some people who are actually got afraid or nervous when they're having certain experiences that were of that. And it's like, am I having an LSD flashback here? Is this psychosis? Is
Mhm.
this? Is this that? Typically, none of the above. It's natural for some of us to uh, touch a chair or look at a chair and have us, it's, whoa, wait a second, that's not just a bunch of dead tree molecules with varnish on top of it. That is something something bottomless and vast hiding in a little form.
Okay, so what would be your invitation today for people who are watching?
Um, if I was going with the theme of the conversation, um, it would be that if you have a practice or a sadhana that you have the receipts that it works, that you have it only takes maybe one or two. You don't need to have a bunch because
Mhm.
sometimes we do forget. But if you know what you're doing is pretty solid, then my invitation is to be very, very persistent with it, and that that's well worth it to, you don't have to necessarily, you don't have to kill yourself. Um, zeal and enthusiasm, I think, are wonderful, but we don't have to be manufacturing it all the time. We don't have to be doing everything dialed up to an 11. But if you dialed well up to about an 8 and steady as she goes, that's my invitation. Dumb persistence. And
Beautiful.
and
Yeah, and my invitation would be to look at, okay, there is wholeness. You can know that from videos, from other people talking, and it's just
yeah.
something that is being looked for. But then before that can be found, there are these slow programs. They're not alive.
Mm,
They're just some sentences that keep repeating in the mind, and they
yeah.
are obstructing the view. So find those
Yeah.
sentences. Look at that. Look
Yeah.
really close because they are playing in the mind every day, all day long. Like, for example, I'm not good enough. I will never get this, or this is something for other people, or I cannot have that. All these little programs, they are just pathetic,
Yeah.
unimpressive, little rubbish that is just flying inside the chamber, echo chamber of the mind. And once they are spotted, poof, they can be gone. And here
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah. And I'll compliment or add to that, is that, as problematic as they are and as rubbish as they are, we don't have to beat them with a rubber mallet. We don't have to hit them in the hammer. There's actually kind of, in a sense, there could be no enemy. It's possible to have no enemy in this on this path, and I think a lot of those programs are kind of like just very, very stubborn defense mechanisms, or they're emanating from very sort of stubborn psychological defense mechanisms. And a lot of those defense mechanisms are just like places that need more love.
Ah, yeah.
And so when we find something that, and love, really love and presence, or love and samadhi, or love, they're fairly tantamount. They're bundled together. Love is like the of one of the easy outgrowths of samadhi into human experience. Ananda, the bliss aspect. And you know, then those bits of psychological tension that are touching that space, they start to kind of unclench. Sometimes they're very stubborn, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's why we have to be persistent. But eventually they're like, oh, wait a second. Oh, that's okay. No problem. And so there they are. And then when the similar thought comes up, at some other point, if it ever does, it has no weight. It has no more magic because its root has been sort of dissolved and let go of
Mhm.
and gone. And I think of those bits of the psyche kind of like shelter dogs, who've been hurt. And so when you adopt a shelter dog, first they might not like people. because they've had very bad experiences.
Yeah.
And just you have to come and bring it love. Put the food there, leave the room so that it feels safe and can eat. Then maybe the next time you bring the food dish in, you can be in the room when it's eating. And maybe the next time you come, and it might even walk up to you very calmly. And then the next time it might even lick your hand. And I think our insides are very, very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
So if as those insides get exposed to that great central sun of warmth and love, then the transformation is much, much easier. Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah.
And this hour again is finished.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's
Mm,
great. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching and listening, and leave a comment, get in touch with Ishtar. I will leave the details in the description.
Mm.
And see you next time. Bye for now.
See you later, Ilona.